Hello, chat. Hello. It is another episode of the pod. I hope everyone's doing well. I am better prepared for the cold lunchtime walk. I do wonder how this is going to go in the winter. Maybe it's literally just this. And if it does start snowing or if it gets icy, then that'd be a little harder. There are field trips currently going on, and so there are echoes of spirited children having tours around the park right now. So, as much as that is fun, we do need to avoid their field trip. I don't want to disrupt any field trip programming. So I'm going to go take some peeks around corners and make sure that I'm not intruding on any tours or field trips. But while I'm doing that, I hope everyone's good, and we will start the pod. Oh, nice. We're good. We'll start the pod. Couple questions today, by the way. Please ask questions if you have them. Discord is definitely the place to ask, but if you're watching this on YouTube, I do read the comments. So please ask them there too. A couple questions today. Some meaty questions. Start with the baseball one first. Someone asked about umpires and is there a pipeline for umpires? How does one ultimately become an umpire? This is kind of it's an interesting question because I don't know if it's the same answer in every sports league. I know in baseball, there's actually a fairly long process of becoming an umpire. And for those who aren't completely on the edge of their seat, glued to baseball news at all times, some may have heard that first woman umpire in Major League Baseball called a game this year, the Major League level. There are many women umpires in minor league baseball, but this was in the history of the sport, the first time a woman was a part of a Major League crew and also called a game. So that's Jen Powell, I believe. So it was big news, mainly because it's obviously a first and a long time coming, I would say. But also, it kind of is a look into what it takes to become an umpire at the Major League level. Because if you heard the interviews about her and interviews with people who work with her, she's been doing this for nearly a decade now, being a professional umpire. So the way it works is you do go through an umpire school, umpire training. There is grinding it out to be an official umpire. There are definitely rules and regulations. Not only are you graded on, quizzed on, following, but they do all of this, and then typically you start off doing smaller games, of course, whether it's rookie games, exhibition games. Some people will do college or high school games, but in terms of organized baseball, you're probably working out of Florida or Arizona and doing what's called complex league. This is effectively the league where your first years or your youngest players are playing in. When they reduced levels in the minor leagues, several of the levels were the lowest levels, which provided more opportunities for these younger players. Now, they have all been effectively squeezed into one level, which is the complex league. So you have the Arizona complex league and you have the Florida complex league. So when those spring training facilities are no longer being used for spring training, they then are converted into affiliate sites for what is colloquially known as rookie ball or complex league. So players who are having their first full year as professional baseball players, players who are doing some sort of development stuff or even rehabbing. You'll see a lot of pro players playing complex league because usually at the complex baseball teams complexes, that's usually where a lot of their medical facilities are, a lot of their rehab facilities are. A lot of that is located at the complex. So I think one of my favorite complex game memories is seeing a rehabbing Justin Verlander play against these, 17 and 18-year-old Dominican kids. And it's he's had his baseball career longer than they've been alive. So he's just mowing them down, a ho-hum day for the future Hall of Famer. So it's always kind of a fun mashup. So anyway, usually these games, there aren't when people watch Major League Baseball, there's typically the home plate umpire, and then you have a first base and a third base umpire, and there's typically one umpire near or around second base. So that is your umpiring crew. Usually 4 at the major league level. Now, as you go down to the minor leagues, sometimes, like at AAA, you might have 4. All crews are effectively just major league crews, just doing minor league games. Or they're kind of like Jen, they're ready to be promoted up into the majors, barring an umpire who is gone or can't work or whatever, or retirement, and then you call up an umpire, effectively, the same way you would call up a player. And then as you go lower into the levels, you'll see a lot of two-person umpiring crews, at the complex league. So at the complex level, a lot of the time you'll have umpire calling the game, home plate umpire, and then your second umpire is a mix of making sure they're hovering around first base, making sure that they're near second base for any steals, basically trying to get all the field calls right, all the in-play calls right. So it's a pretty tough job. I know we kind of rag on umpires for getting the call wrong, but no one applauds umpires when they get the calls right. I know when we're watching the game here, or when I'm watching the game with other people similar to me, even when there is a bad call or a call that's questionable, watching enough of the game, you could say whether or not that was a consistent call or an inconsistent call, right? For example, if someone is calling a really large strike zone and there are potential, like, not just questionable strikes, as in like right on the line, and some would call it a ball, some would call it a strike. Some are like clearly outside, and those are being called strikes more often than not. Oh boy, I'm hearing machinery downstairs. Let's take a gander. I think we're okay. Worst case scenario, walk back up the stairwell. This is also a tough podcast to do right now because I forgot my belt and my pants are very much falling down. So I am holding my pants up as I walk down these stairs. Two-man umpiring crews are pretty tough, but it does show a lot of mettle, right? Like, as you are calling the game, the more accurate you call those games, the better. And of course, like, consistency is a big thing. So for umpires who might call a larger zone, so long as they're consistent, teams tend to be fine with it. That I can remember many times where it was both ways. They were calling balls that were more strikes, and they were calling strikes that were more balls, but it was the same calls on for us and for the other teams. So that seemed to be fine. I have no problems if there's a consistent zone, and nor should people. But when the zone becomes more inconsistent, it seems like the methodology that a particular umpire might be using to estimate their zone is sensitive or susceptible to inconsistent calls. And of course, that would be bad, because then that's when you get like the one random strike call that, you know, a pitch in that general vicinity wouldn't get a call on, except for this one in that game by that one umpire. So when umpires do have bad games or poor games, there's actually an entire system that the league provides for dissenting opinions. So even though the game is over and the record is going to go down how it goes down, you can, like, as a team, put in a claim effectively and say, like, look at what's happening here on this play. If it's like a strike zone thing, that's one thing, but if it's just a rule that wasn't enforced that should have been, you can actually put in effectively a ticket, a claim, and the league will review it and say whether or not they got it wrong, or say why your team or this particular play was actually within the rules. And over the course of the season, teams take this very seriously, obviously, because if you don't enforce the rules of the game and people are losing based off rules and not by the true talent of the players, then there's like a rule enforcement issue, right? So teams take this very seriously. The league takes it very seriously. And usually they collect all of these responses, and then around during the winter meetings, they have a presentation on like updates or changes to how rules may be enforced. And that's how you come up with like some of these things, like, you know, what is a catch, right? Like, when is a ball caught? And the functional definition is if the ball is within the mitt area and it is perceived catchable, then it is in the mitt. And then catching is having possession through, I think, the exchange or before the exchange or something. I can't recall exactly the rule, but there are rules around what the definition of a catch is. There are rules on what the definition of in play is. So think like some parks where like playing off, like if pitcher throws a pickoff to first, and the first baseman can't catch it, what's in play and what's not, right? Sometimes certain pieces of the field are in play and sometimes they're not. And the reasoning is usually pretty clear, like the way that the park is designed. There's, an environment like a wall that exists for one side of the field that doesn't exist for another. Therefore, sometimes things are in play that aren't usually in play, and sometimes things are in play or not in play where you would typically think, oh yeah, like other parks that would be in play. So rule enforcement, there are ways to discuss were rules enforced appropriately, adequately, and honestly, on the back end, this is a little where I don't really know how things work. Umpires have their own union, and also umpires have their own process of whether or not an umpire is doing well or not. Now, whether or not how those processes are enforced, and whether there is a true promotion relegation system of umpires, I don't know. But this is all to say that there is rules and regulations around the promotion of umpires, and also enforcement of rules. And so it's not a job ad goes on Teamworks and a crew needs a new crew chief and you could just apply, right? There's to get into it, it's kind of I wouldn't say it's medical school, but in terms of time, it ends up being a similar timeline as medical school. You get in, it takes a while to learn all the things. You have to work these games. It's not dissimilar from doing rotations and doing some form of a residency. And then if you're lucky, you end up being a part of a major league crew. So, all right, that's my answer. That's the answer to that. This is actually good because, like I said, 2 meaty questions. So the umpire question, interesting question. Not a lot of people know a ton about how umpiring works, especially in terms of promotions and relegation. So much so that even though I know maybe a little more than most, I actually don't know all the ins and outs. I'm actually going to go back to my office after this and read a little more about it. But anyway, next question. Someone asked, this is actually a more job, career, tech general question. Is there any first-time advice for people who are going from individual contributor to some sort of manager, project manager, people manager, but any advice? And yeah, I got a bunch of advice. When I read this question, I think my first reaction to it was do you want to be a manager? And not just the title or any of the pay increases, but in terms of what it ultimately means, reducing your, technical skill workload. So if you were 80% on the keyboard, 20% meetings, right? Now, if that's 60% on the keyboard, are you okay with that? If it's 50% on the keyboard, is that okay? And as you continue to grow as a manager, you're spending less and less time on the keyboard, right? Because you're coordinating meetings, you're doing reporting, you're working on admin stuff. You're doing all the things that, a manager would do and not necessarily a person who reports to a manager. So the first question is do you want to be? You're getting less of the thing that you might truthfully enjoy, right? Some people love coding. Some people love solving problems and just hacking away. And, I've created an entire persona outside of work where that's what I do. I spin up a notebook, I jab out code, it's fun, I like doing it. But at work, honestly, there have been like times where, I might be coding on different extracurricular projects simply because my work demands requires zero coding. Some weeks I'm just doing admin, budgeting, meeting stuff. And when I go home, I have like coding projects, right? So first question always is like, do you want to? Like, do you want to ultimately do all that nitty gritty admin work that comes along with managing? Because typically the reason people want to become a manager, if they truthfully want to do leadership stuff, is because they feel like they want to shape the identity or the philosophy of their department and ultimately the company. So if you feel like you're noticing things that could be better, but you're not in a position to make those things better, then it's possible that leadership is the only path to making those things better, right? Something that's like, people always ask, like, how do you even know how to do any of that? Like, how do you know you're gonna like admin stuff? How do you know if you do have like the vision for like improving leadership things or philosophical things at a company or within a department or within a team? And the easiest real life thing you could probably do is like manage an intern or manage the intern hiring process. So being hands-on with like what it means to hire someone, hands-on with like overseeing someone's work, knowing that someone else's work is a reflection of you, all of that's really important. And like, I wouldn't say it's low stakes, but relative to managing and hiring an entire department, the stakes are real, right? Like, it is a hiring process, it is overseeing someone's work, and really it's like arguably the most important positions you're hiring into are the first year entry level roles, because if you get it right, and that's a really good investment into someone's career. If you get it wrong, it's not as big of a hit as like, I don't know, a director leaving or something, but it does put you back a year in terms of like recruiting the best talent, right? So sometimes I tell people like, well, if you don't know, but you think you might want to do this kind of stuff, managing, if you haven't reckoned with the idea of like an intern yet, then that's like the easiest first step. Like, just see if you could help with the intern process, manage intern hiring process, or even oversee an intern's work. And that's all like before you even know if you want to do it. Then like, if you know like, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm now going to be in a position to be a manager. What's the things that I need to know in order to be a manager, right? Hold on, I think there might be a golf cart coming up behind me. Oh, they went down. Okay. So things you should probably know first time you're being a manager is like, whatever your philosophy is, like whatever you want to evoke or invoke as change, like the reason why you're being put into the position of leadership that you're going to be put into, it's extremely important, in my opinion, to like make sure that people know that that's what you're going to be about, right? Like, you need to be out there saying like, hey, we're changing this thing and this is how I see it. And like, these are the reasons why it's better to do it this way than whatever way we've currently been doing it. And you have to be decisive with whatever that first statement is, because if you're not, then it's hard to be a directionless, indecisive leader. You know, that's a recipe for failure and inadequacy. So it is important to know, like, if you're leading a group, how do you want to lead? And ultimately, like, why are you in the position to lead that would be different than others? There's a pretty big gap of like managers who manage because they were the best individual contributor, and then managers who are managing because their vision of what a department might look like, their empathy, their ability to be self-aware and aware of their department is better than the people around them. So, of course, it's best if you could do both, but that's extremely rare. So, I do tend to say, like, for me, when I came back here, and when I was at KFC, both of the things that I started out with was like, this department and its needs. Like, I see the roadmap, the growth of this department in this direction, and it's important for us to grow and do these things in this order if we want to be the best, right? If we want to be relatively better and also absolutely better, we got to do these things, right? So it starts with like, what are we currently doing? How should we organize and maneuver our resources? So that's first. Second is, once you have people, how do you keep those people? It's important to know that once you bring someone in, a lot of the times, first-year managers and new managers, they will bring someone in with this idea of what they're doing in the short term, but they have very short-sighted or incomplete as to what someone's roadmap is for the long term. And that gets people into trouble because if you don't have a vision for how someone fits in the bigger picture, then not only are you going to be frustrated as a manager, but they're definitely going to be frustrated, right? Because they don't think you have their best interests. So it's important to prioritize, like, when you bring someone in, you know what they're going to be helping you out with in the immediate, in the critical short term, but in the long term, where do they fit in? Like, how do you see them growing? How do you ultimately get them to their growth points? So investing a lot of time, and that's where a lot of the meetings and admin time comes in. You're investing time into like talking to these people, talking to their managers, talking to their collaborators, seeing like how things are going, the rate as to which they're growing in the ways that you want them to. That's all like very important, right? So it's important to know that like my first two moves, whenever I am put in a leadership position, is understand what's going on. Is there anything I need to change? And then two, if I do make these changes, how does it affect how people feel about how they're growing? And how do I ultimately assure them that like their growth, that their best interests, that their future endeavors, I'm supporting, right? And I'm cultivating. Because if you don't have those things, if you don't have to trust the people who are working under you or for you, or with you, then it's difficult for them to like buy into the entire program, because at some point in time you're going to ask people to do things that they don't agree with, and just because they don't agree with it doesn't mean they can abstain or not do something, right? Like if I said, hey, everyone's working on the projection system, like we need all hands on deck for people to work on projections. Half my department doesn't work on projections. So if I said that, though, I have to have confidence that like not only are they going to do it, but that they know that this move, while they might not necessarily agree, they're going to do it, and they're going to want to invest the most, trying to be the best at this new thing that they're asked to do. When you have managers or bosses who jerk you around on different projects, and it feels like you don't have like continuity on any one thing, then it erodes confidence that you know what you're doing in terms of their career. So I tend to manage from the point of view of like, here are the departmental project needs. People will fit in where they fit in. Ultimately, these are the things that they can work on. But on top of that, what people want to work on, that's the compass, right? Like if someone's working on projections and they ultimately want to be, the department head, well, what are the things that the department head, me, uses projections for, and what do people outside this department use projections for? And ultimately, can you be that specialist, that expert? And then along the way, can you also learn the things that are not projections related? Because the department head has responsibility over those things too. Like, how are you going to get exposure to those areas? So they might like doing one thing, but they want to be somewhere else. Triangulate that with like the supplemental projects that they should also be doing in order to get that experience. I won't say who I heard this from because I might be misremembering it. But from an extremely large tech company, the way they do it is with like, actually this happened at KFC too. So you have a leveling system in the background, right? So like, let's just say you're like a level 5 employee or something. And that comes with like a particular pay band. But like, in terms of titles, because that's removed from the leveling system, you could have like an egregious amount of titles, and they don't have to be one title. Like you have your primary title, but you could have like a variety of titles, right? And so something that we did at KFC, something that I hope to promote here more often, is multiple titles, particularly if you're cross-collaborating, then you can have a different title if you're working with a different department. So, for example, I'm the Senior Director of Analytics, but when I'm working with the amateur group, I might be the Psychology and Cognition Director, or I might be the Analytics Coordinator, or I might be in player development, I might be a player development analyst. And that doesn't negate that I'm the senior director of one department. Rather, it makes conversations easier when different departments are having their discussions, and the title reflects their responsibilities, more so than their hierarchical rank. So if I'm an analyst on one project, a coordinator on a different one, then you could kind of see like, all right, well, on this project, they're the hands-on keyboard. On this other project, they're more of a managerial role, but they might report to someone. On this other project, they oversee the entire thing, right? So having multiple titles can sometimes alleviate some managerial issues like rank, right? Like how closely does rank also correlate with like status at the company? Like if you're a director, are all directors seen the same? If you're an analyst, are all analysts seen the same? Within your department, is a manager different than a manager in another department? Or is there stratification across the title of analyst? You know, like these are all things that if you're a manager, especially a first-time manager, you should be thinking about, because at some point in time, people are going to ask about titles and promotions, and ultimately you're going to have a philosophy of titles and promotions. Like how do you want that to look? What is the most fair in your mind based off the work that you foresee on your roadmap, your department roadmap? Who is in your department who can ultimately fill these roles, etc. So it's kind of like a handful of like small general things that I think about when I think like new person, new leader in a department. What can they do? There's someone over here. There's like an ambulance going on. There's like, you guys probably can't see it, but there's like someone like fell or something. So there's like a fire truck there. Anyway, so that's my thoughts. Okay, chat, that's about it. I'm gonna get out of here now. Probably no pods going into the weekend. It's probably the last one I got before Monday. Try to do one Monday. If you were watching this before October 29th, my last stream is October 29th. So if you're around, I will hopefully be streaming all day. Effectively, once I get off work, I want to go live. So, but it'll be my send-off stream on Nickwan Data Sci. So I do hope to see everyone there. And again, for those wondering, this pod will still go on. I'm not necessarily going to promote it as more than how I am promoting it, which is just in the Discord. So please feel free to share it, though. Like if you think some of these things are valuable, you could even clip things and post them elsewhere. Like I don't care, but I'm not gonna. This is just like for those who found this little nook on the internet, and if you find this valuable, I do enjoy making these, and the questions are pretty good. And so hopefully my insights have been good up to now. You will continue to get these until I feel tired. So, but please ask questions. And again, retiring on October 29th, last stream. So hope to see you there. And if you're watching this post October 29th, like you found this, you found all these podcasts, you're going through each of them one by one, and you're at this one, that's pretty cool. I hope you enjoy listening to these as I make them. All right, I'm gonna go. New meeting. Bye, chat.